My guest on this week's episode of Suds Search is Barry Schwartz, CEO of RustyBrick, editor of Search Engine Roundtable, and news editor at Search Engine Land. Barry is one of the most influential and important voices in the industry. For the better part of 2 decades, Barry Schwartz has been the go-to resource for daily news, industry insights, and changes within the search industry. In 2018, Barry was awarded the U.S. Search Personality of the Year at the U.S. Search Awards. In 2019, he received the Outstanding Community Service Award from the Search Engine Land Awards. In addition to his columns, Barry has his own video series, which is unsurprisingly excellent. In the videos, Barry interviews thought leaders at conferences, in their offices, and more recently, outdoors at a safe social distance. Barry has written tens of thousands of blogs on topics related to SEO, PPC, and everything related to search. It's hard to imagine what SEO would be like without Barry's contributions. Grab something cold to drink and join me for a conversation with Barry Schwartz. We'll talk about why he likes to keep his blog posts short. We'll talk about the future of the SMX conference series, and I'll talk to him a little bit about the famous "Is this new?" inquiries he receives on social media. All right, Barry Schwartz, welcome to Suds Search. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is a big get for us. I really appreciate you coming on, and I think for our audience, you're a man who needs no introduction. I wanted to share with you. We have a standard.
It's great being here.
We have a standard interview question for prospective new SEOs at Search Lab. And it goes something like this, like, tell me about the blogs and podcasts and websites you go to stay up to date on SEO. And there are many acceptable answers. The right answers are obviously Search Engine Land and Search Engine Roundtable. But I wonder how you'd answer that question. How do you stay up to date, and how do you write these columns, and how do you know what's going on in search?
So I have little like birds and spies at the Googleplex, watching everything that's going on. I installed some malware on people's computers at the Google offices. I just use I track a lot of the social media on Twitter and forums and even old-fashioned forums. I subscribe to tons and tons of RSS feeds. Okay. In fact, when Google had Google Reader, Google sent me all this whole swag bag from Google Reader saying I was their number one consumer of RSS feeds out of all their RSS feed users.
That's easy to believe.
So I follow a lot of stuff.
Well, interesting. And I think one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was the medium itself, just blogging. That's how I learned SEO, was reading blogs. I kind of got into this in 2009, I guess. And so there really wasn't anything else out there. I guess when Whiteboard Friday came out, that was kind of like the first big change, like where people went to video. So as like videos and webinars and live streaming and dare I even say podcasts have gathered steam, I wonder, I guess I've always still had a preference for blogs. I just think it's the best way to learn. Now you do plenty of video, you do other stuff. You're not just a blogger, but I think of you as a blogger. You've done like tens of thousands of blogs. What about the medium blogging still appeals to you, even after all these columns you've done?
It's I don't know. I type faster than it's faster. It's I could see something, write something, post it. When you do video, you have to I do a video twice a week. One is like almost real time. And even that real time video that I do every Friday, I have to record it. I have to edit it a little bit and then export it and then upload it to iTunes and also as well as YouTube. It just takes longer, and I'm not the most animated person. I'm kind of somewhat boring, and you don't see that boringness when it just comes to typing. I'm more of a monotone speaker. For me, listening to somebody give a great speech, really, no offense to Greg, who's great on stage, and so forth. I don't know if he's on camera here. I guess not, but he's probably just watching behind the scenes. Greg Grifford. Basically, he's great on stage, and I'm not. But I speak in a very monotone level, and I will say 1 billion things in a short session, whereas really good speakers will deliver a message and repeat that message multiple times so people understand it and can relate to it. I like to sit in a speech where somebody gives me every single time, every word that comes out of their mouth is something brand new. As opposed to repeating the same thing. I'm weird that way, whereas a lot of great speakers do it the opposite way.
Yeah, it's interesting. Your style of blogging is different too. Yours are shorter. You're kind of pithy in the way that you write it. Everybody's like the new, for years now, it's been about long form content, and even your colleagues at Search Engine Land write these much longer columns than you do. Yours are usually just straight to the point. It could be wrong, but it seems like maybe a decision was made maybe many, many years ago. Why write many, many short posts rather than long form content? One of the, kind of all the things that people are doing on other blogs these days.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are busy. I respect people's time. I know my time. I'm so busy. And I don't want people necessarily, if somebody could tell me something in less words, I appreciate that. And almost every single word that I type, I do it in a way that can be done in the shortest amount of time. And I think the funny thing is Google wants to rank the long form content. I said this before. Google loves ranking the long form content, but yet what they know searchers want are the feature snippets, the 2-3 lines. And that's all they give them is the snippet of the content, the short form content from that long piece of content that they rank very well. But yet nobody wants it. Nobody wants to read that long form content. They skip around. They have the headlines to make it jazz up. They stick in images and stuff like that. But if you ask anybody, any in the SEO world, anybody, and that's why Instagram's so popular and TikTok and stuff like that, because people don't want to consume the long form stuff. They want their quick hit and get over with. And I think it's more of a challenge to give a speech in 20 minutes than to give it in an hour. It's more of a challenge to write a short form blog post, in my opinion, than a really long form blog post.
It's like that Abraham Lincoln quote or something about that. So, well, you've been in the industry for so long, and I just started to think about this. Like when I started reading it, it's like so many big changes. Whether that's algorithm updates or new announcements from Google and everything in between. If you could reflect on your career a little bit, what are some of the most important events that you've covered? Maybe what are like the top 3 even, if you could come up with it.
So if I stick with algorithms, specifically organic search, it would probably be the Florida update in 2003. Okay. It would probably be the Panda update 2011, I think. And then probably the Penguin update after that. But you could make the exception around core updates when Google started confirming those on some level. You could say when Google went with universal search, where it wasn't just 10 blue links, it was other things. So there's lots of things that you could go ahead and talk about: machine learning, feature snippets. There's lots of things that have drastically changed the search space. But if you just focus on algorithms, I would say those 3 algorithm updates were probably the most significant.
So Florida was before my time, although I know about it. But I definitely remember Panda and Penguin being momentous moments in my career. When a story like that comes out, are you in the room with Google? Does Google talk to you? How does the sausage get made on Search Engine Land? And take us kind of behind the scenes.
So my malware jumps up. No, I'm just joking. It depends. Like in the early days, like Florida, it was like I noticed a ton of SEOs in the SEO communities, writing about my rankings, something's happening. Also with Panda, this is before Google confirmed it. We were calling it something else. I think we were calling it the scraper algorithm or something like that. Or basically we were seeing Google making drastic changes, and the forums would literally explode. Same thing with Penguin. I would cover these updates before Google would actually announce them, based on the SEO community going nuts. Like my clients' rankings are going up or down. It's great or it's horrible. My site's going up or down, and you would see the community explode. It was much easier back in the PageRank days where Google would do these Google Toolbar PageRank updates. We used to call the Google Dance, not the physical dance, but the Google data centers would actually dance with new PageRank scores and stuff like that. Then it became harder when Google stopped doing that in 2004, I think, or something like that, where we kind of didn't really see it. But then the rankings would change constantly, but drastic changes would be, people would just discuss a lot. And I would say there's a Google update going on. It was unconfirmed. And then eventually Google started to confirm them. Sometimes Google will pre-announce stuff and I might get a 5-minute update or a 10-minute update saying from somebody at Google saying, hey, we're going to announce something. I'd be like, on the algorithm side, so I'll pretty much know it's a core update coming, and I'll type as fast as I can, and then Google would post it on Twitter, and then I'll include the relevant information for Google and hit post. But usually I don't get a heads up. Rarely do I ever get a heads up.
Okay, cool. Well, I think one of the things I have to ask you about is you're famous for receiving a lot of is this new inquiries on social media and elsewhere. And the thing is almost none of the things people ask you about are actually new. It's like if somebody actually gets you, it's like this huge major accomplishment. You almost seem to have like a photographic memory of like SERP features and other that. And I don't know if our audience could fully appreciate how difficult that is. Like I'm just in local SEO, and I don't know if I know like all the SERP features in local for sure. Tell our audience about this talent for knowing when something in SEO is new or not. I just find it fascinating.
Yeah, I don't think it's a photographic memory. I didn't do that well in elementary school, or I did very well in college, but not in elementary school. But I think it's more about if you type it out, like if you write it, you kind of remember it. And that's another reason why I kind of started blogging, is because if you type it, you remember it. Now, after almost, I think, well over 30,000 blog posts, doesn't really hold on as much as writing one or two blog posts. But also, there's a search box. So if somebody asks me, is this new? Sometimes I'd be like, kind of looks new, or maybe it doesn't. And even sometimes I will write something that I thought was new that I actually covered maybe 10 years ago. So even I get stumbled on that, and I kind of slip up on that. But there is a search box on my site. You can do a Google site command and search for it, and usually it will come up on Search Engine Roundtable if it's new or not.
All right. Is there some merchandise around this thing now? I think I saw a hat, perhaps. Is there somebody making?
Yeah, people have made stickers. People have made shirts, animated GIFs. I think I have a hat. Yeah, here's a hat somebody sent me. There's websites. There's memes. SEO community is fun.
That's fascinating. That's where I want to go next, is to the SEO community. You know, in marketing, we talk all the time about knowing your audience, and we do all these avatars for personas and stuff like that. From an outsider's point of view, I guess my show's for the SEO community, so I should be a little more aligned on this, but it seems like they're generally a cool audience, but occasionally they can be kind of rapacious and greedy for more information so they can get up ahead of their competitors. How would you characterize the people reading your stuff? Do you even think about the audience anymore? You've been doing this for so long.
Yeah, of course I think about the audience, but it's really, I don't really care so much. You have to have thick skin, writing or speaking, in the space, as you probably know, as Greg probably knows. You could get attacked by tweeting something or whatever. It doesn't bother me at all. It's like, I have rhino skin or whatever. Nothing really bothers me. You could threaten to shoot me in the head, which people have done, in the past. People have threatened my life. People have threatened my family's lives for reporting on the news. So it's kind of funny. But again, I understand it, because these guys have suffered dramatic, Panda update may have wiped out the guy's business and then their family and then their income. And so I understand it. They need to blame somebody. But yeah, the community is very, very interesting. It's a great community. I kind of find it funny how the local SEO community and also the PPC community, the paid search community, kind of makes fun of our community, the organic SEO community, because it's much more ruthless, the organic SEO community, than the local SEO community and also the paid search community. I'm not sure why, but it's definitely interesting, and I enjoy it. I actually love listening to the trolls. I don't know why. I enjoy it. So it's fun.
I wonder if are you from New York? Is it the New Yorker in you? You like the? All right. Well,
I'm from New York. Yeah. People complain all the time in my videos that I talk way too fast.
Well, very good. Well, this is the last thing I had a question about. Just doing this. This is sort of a publisher SEO question. It's one thing to write. What'd you say? 30,000, that many blog posts. It's almost an amazing amount of blog posts. It becomes another job, it seems like, to maintain and remember it, like we talked about, so you can have this recall. Once you've written a post, whether that's at SEO Roundtable or Search Engine Land or anywhere else, is that post done? Do you return to it? And is it new information arises? How can you keep track of that many posts? You know what I mean?
So I do tag my posts. So anything under the Google Penguin update or maybe the page experience update, I will generally tag them. So I have a tag page, which Google doesn't like to index as much, but I find it very, very valuable. So yeah, and also the site command works very, very well. There's the search box on the site works very well to find this stuff. And this is a hobby. This is not my job. So it's a passion. So I enjoy it. And I think that helps a lot when it comes to writing so much and remembering it as well. People who are passionate about their hobbies, it's fun. So I enjoy it a lot.
Okay. Well, Well, Clay, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the company you've covered a lot, which is Google. Potentially, maybe if we understand what motivates, Google, perhaps we could align our tactics and strategies better. One of the topics right now is about site quality. This is something that's come up a lot at SE Roundtable. And it seems like this is like a common thread, as I've looked at the last 3 years, whether that's Eat Core Web Vitals and topics in between. It seemed to be about Google trying to understand the quality of a page. From your perspective and from what you've learned, what are some glaring examples of poor site quality, and how's Google starting to understand this better?
It's a good question. It's funny. I think John Mueller just today, I'm not sure if you're publishing the date of this. So I responded to somebody about their site. They were complaining about their site not ranking well or not being indexed. And John's like, he actually said it right out. He's like, your content is horrible. I don't know, something like that. I don't know the exact words, but it was pretty strong. I mean, you can look at a website visually and just say, this site looks like it's from 1999, right. Not from 2021. You could look at a site and say, this content is written really poorly. You could look at a site and say, I can't navigate it. I can't figure it out. A lot of the stuff that, you would look at and say, this site looks professional. I would trust giving my credit card to this website. I would trust, filling out their contact form. I would call them. Can you even call them? Do you know where they're located? Are they, based in, Chicago, or are they based in some other, location that maybe they're trying to hide their location? Do they have about us information about who owns the company? These are types of stuff that a normal person who would give over, who would maybe call the company or maybe buy something from them might look at before they actually give over their credit card information or their phone number and stuff like that. And I think a lot of that is, it was easy to fake back in the old days. You create a one-page affiliate site to rank for whatever keyword you wanted to, right. Pretend you're that company, and somebody clicks on your website and clicks on a big button saying, click here to whatever, and it'll go to that main website from that other company. And all you're doing is kind of funneling that you're that middleman for the affiliate site. You're the affiliate site, the middleman for taking them to the actual company. And I think Google's like, we really want to show the most authoritative result for that query, and how can we do that? And a lot of that is based on what would a user really want, how would a user feel safe, trust, et cetera, on that type of topic. And it's gone to more extremes over the years when it came to, obviously, when I named one of the Google updates, the Google Medic update, which I got a lot of flack over. But when it came to that, a lot of the sites that were hit by that update were medically related, right. Or either they sold medical products or financial products, or like e-commerce sites were impacted, but they sold medical products or sure. Financial products, and so forth. So it kind of, that EAT, expertise, trust, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, kind of was escalated a lot when it came to those categories of YMYL, your money, your life. We saw that first with the Medic update, and now we see that escalate more and beyond the YMYL space over time, especially with fresh news-oriented content and stuff like that. So I think Google's really looking to try to make sure the experience for the searchers are something that the searchers, like what they'll land on. Their goal is to make sure to give the searcher the best user experience, so that when they land at a website or they get a piece of content, feature snippet from Google, that the searcher is satisfied. If they're not, they could easily go to Bing, they could easily go to DuckDuckGo, they could go to Alta Vista. I'm just joking. But they could go to other websites and get that search, because it's very easy to switch from, just instead of typing in google.com to type in bing.com and so forth.
That makes sense. One more question about Google. So one of the topics I feel like I've discussed with a lot of my guests is this. It's like a tension between sort of competing consumer demands. On one hand, it's like for more privacy, and on the other hand, it's for more personalized results. So this is kind of more of a concern for PPC folks, and maybe I'd be curious to pick your brain on that. But I've been in SEO long enough to remember when keywords in Google Analytics didn't all just say not provided. Like, there actually would be stuff in there. So, as you think about it, in 2021, what are some ways we might see privacy impact our ability to do our jobs as digital marketers?
I mean, I think we've seen it. I think we've seen it a lot. I mean, obviously with not provided, that was the biggest shock. It's like, Google's like, the realm of HTTPS and privacy, we're not going to pass you query data. And we saw with the AOL data exploit from years and years ago that I think Wall Street Journal, New York Times is able to locate some old grandmother who did a search about some type of medical condition she had. And there was kind of opened up the box. We're saying query data the person searched for this condition, I have a rash, and then later search for their name, you kind of like figure out who they are and stuff like that. So obviously privacy is very, very important. We saw that also with Facebook and the elections and so forth, previous elections. We've seen this a lot where Facebook had to dial back a lot of their advertising targeting. You were able to target an individual in a specific company to try to recruit them or to try to sell them something or try to change their mind about who to vote for and so forth. So there's been a lot of public concern about privacy, more so in European countries than in the U.S., but obviously significantly in the U.S. as well recently. And I think we're close to the end of that. I think it's not going to get worse. I think a lot of the platforms have already adjusted significantly around that. You see Google with their privacy sandbox, although it's not really catching on so much. A lot of people are not liking it so much with their cohorts.
I think
flock, they're calling it.
Flock is it's a bad word to say. It doesn't sound right. Like you got something in your throat. Yeah.
But we see that. I think we're going to see like changes to it, adapt. But I don't think we're going to see any significant decreases in terms of what information we, as marketers or advertisers, could get from the platforms. I think they've already done much. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think we're as far as we can go.
I think that's a good prediction. So, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about SMX. We're filming this in September, and as we're speaking, there's like the most recent spike in COVID cases because of the Delta variant and other causes. So this is such an important conference series for digital marketers. It's an international thing. So, like Greg and I are supposed to go to SMX Munich in the spring, and my wife very much wants to know whether or not that's going to be possible. So I said, I'll talk to Barry Schwartz about it. We'll see what happens. But I know this is a fluid situation. How far out can you guys plan for SMX? What do you know at this stage?
So XMX Munich is completely not under the XMX.
I'm sorry.
Like I have no authority over it. It's run by a third-party company. I think we just lease out the name. I'm not involved in the business side so much. I know for XMX shows that we run, at XMX directly, the Third Door Media Company, we're not having anything in person at least until 2022. They're all going to be virtual. We may have an XMX Advanced at the end of 2022. We're not sure yet. Right now, nothing has been planned. I was hoping personally to do an XMX in Israel in January. I saw the numbers were drastically declining. They were the first country to be like almost fully vaccinated. And it looked great. And then a couple months ago, like you said, the Delta variant kind of exploded. The vaccines started to like wane, I guess. I don't even know. I'm not a doctor or anything. And people started to get sick again. So I canceled it. I put it on hold and we'll see what happens. So I personally don't feel comfortable flying somewhere and going to a big show. I know there was Brighton SEO, which seemed to be really done well with a nice number of people. I'm not sure how many, maybe 500. They usually have thousands and thousands of people. I know PubCon had an event in Florida that was a very, very small audience, done very well in a very safe way. There are ways to do it safely, but even my daughter had a bat mitzvah, and we're supposed to do it in a restaurant. I figured by the end of the summer it would have been, very safe based on the numbers and the vaccines and stuff like that. And a week before, I'm like, I'm going to spend extra money, take it out of the restaurant, and do it in an outside venue with a lot less people. And if I get one person sick under my watch, I would feel horrible. Mm-hmm. Even if they don't get sick and die, if they're all for a week from work. I know if I'm off for a week of work, how much money I lose and how much catch up there is, it's just not worth it. So I don't want that on my head. And although I don't run XMX, I don't think we're doing anything until the end of 2022.
All right. Well, listen, you are like an absolute like treasure for SEOs everywhere. I want to just like to your face say thank you for all your work over the years. If people want to get in touch with you, what is your favorite social media and how should they do that?
The easiest is on Twitter. The handle is @RustyBrick. So just message me there or just reach out to me at rustybrick.com/Barry.
Is there a story behind RustyBrick? How did that become your name?
So the company was my brother and I, my twin brother Ronnie. We built it in high school in 1994, the name. So it was a company we built while we were 14 years old, building software and websites and stuff like that. Back then it was just animated GIFs. Now they're animated GIFs are back again. But yeah, it's just a company we built back in high school that we have 20 or so people working with us. We don't do any marketing. People think we do SEO and marketing. We just build software. We build mobile apps. We build taxi cab software. We build web-based software for hospitals. We build custom software. We don't do any SEO.
Awesome. Well, listen, I'm glad I asked. So I'm going to give you a virtual cheers from Chicago. Thank you so much for coming on. And for everyone listening, we'll be back next week for another episode of Suds Search.